Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing a review. This movie is a horror comedy from New Zealand, English language, released in the year 2015, directed by Jason Lee Howden, and this movie is called Deathgasm. So Deathgasm combines death metal with horror. You've got this guy who is at high school, he's being bullied, he really doesn't fit in, and he seeks refuge in his death metal. So he loves this stuff, he has a group of friends who he likes to play with. They're not very good, but this is where they can escape their reality. So this guy, he lives with his uncle and auntie and his cousin, his cousin is very aggressive. His cousin is the one that is bullying him, so he really doesn't like him. And this is a very Christian family, and they're offended by the music that this guy plays, and that he believes in Satan, and it's all about Hail Satan. So the family really don't like that. So they are at very much, there's a lot of clashing within this family. So one day when this main character goes to a record store, he's looking at death metal, and he comes across this other fan of death metal, and they quickly form this bond. And this main character says, "Why don't you come and play in our band?" So this is what happens, and then later in the film they come across some mysterious death metal music, and it actually turns out that this is ancient music, and when this band decide to play it with the hope that they can make this their own song, they unleash an ancient evil that turns the townspeople into bloodthirsty zombie-like demons, and they are summoning the strength of Satan. So it all goes out of control, and in order to try and save this town and stop the world from being taken over by Satan himself, this group of friends are going to have to band together and try and fight this onslaught and get down to the bottom of what this music is all about. So whether or not they can do that is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Deathgasm. I really enjoyed this film. Now this is a movie that is definitely not afraid to do this to society. Basically it's saying that death metal fans, constantly death metal fans are rejected by society. It's the music of Satan, and religious groups will come out and say that this music should be banned, that this music is evil, and that death metal fans really are looked and frowned upon. And I think that this movie is definitely saying, this is what we think of your opinion, and I really like that. And now personally I'm not a fan of death metal, but I can connect to these characters in liking something that is frowned upon by the rest of society, and that the society that label themselves as normal, how they think upon this because it makes them feel uncomfortable. And it's definitely the same with horror fans. A lot of fans that don't like, fans of cinema that don't like horror, they frown upon us like we're some kind of freaks. So you get that relatable quality within these characters, and I thought that was very interesting. But at the same time, it always keeps the typical New Zealand horror comedy flavour. This movie has flashbacks to the early Peter Jackson stuff, and it seems like all these films are so good because they respect the source material. And obviously Peter Jackson really set the standard with his films of Brain Dead and Bad Taste, and all those really early movies that really put New Zealand horror comedy on the map. And all these movies recently that have come out, Housebound, What We Do in the Shadows, and now Deathgasm, they stay true to that formula, but they make it themselves. They make their own sort of film. So although it's a homage to Peter Jackson, they're not copying everything off him. So what you get in this movie is what you get in a lot of New Zealand horror comedies. You've got a very good script, very crude humour. I will say that this is more of a hardcore sort of horror comedy because there's a lot of excessive language, and some of the jokes are very sexual, but they're all very well done, and it does keep that typical style of humour. It's very similar to Australian humour, and I love this style of humour. It's not my favourite style of humour, but it is different, and I think that New Zealand horror comedies really understand what it's all about. And so they blend horror, which, there are some very, very good horror set pieces. The gore is extreme. I mean, I was really impressed by the gore factor. There was a limited CGI. There was some CGI here and there, but it is few and far between, so it does go to practical gore effects. So fans of that style of gore will really enjoy this, and I think it pays a lot of respect to horror fans. And as I said, it is a commentary on how people who are in a minority and they enjoy what they're doing and they're happy in what they're doing and it's an escape for them, how the society will frown upon them. And I think this movie really fights that back, and it's saying this is how we're going to make a movie. It's going to be provocative, it's going to be offensive, but we don't care. This is what horror fans are all about, and this ultimately is what death metal is all about as well. It's basically a way to rebel against society. And so you've got the fine blend of death metal music, and you've got the horror element of it, and it just combines to be just a really fascinating and a very, very entertaining and extremely funny horror comedy. Thought the acting was very good. You don't really connect to the characters themselves, but you can connect with their situation and the thing that they're doing. You know, as I said, being labelled as, you know, these evil beings and, you know, these sickos and weirdos, you can relate to that and you can really support them, and you kind of hate the society. And that's what makes it a lot of fun as well, is that this society have been transformed into these demon-like zombies. And I think that's their attitude, is that one person thinks it and the rest of them think it. So it's like a sheep and domino effect where everyone shares the same opinion on minorities. And so I thought that zombie demons really symbolised that minority. It was basically a case of the death metal fans versus the rest of the world. And so as I said, the gore effects were fantastic, the script was fantastic, some very crude humour in there. So it is definitely more of a hardcore sort of horror comedy. So if you like your excessive gore and you're a gore hound, you're definitely going to get a lot out of this. The acting from the supporting cast, it was all very good. They're likeable characters, and there was one character, the cousin, that was very over the top, and there was something that happens to him later in the film that was absolutely laugh out loud hilarious. And I found myself laughing on more than one occasion, and there were a few occasions when I was genuinely scared. You know, there's some very good horror set pieces, and there's a fine blend of horror and comedy. And as I said in other reviews of other horror comedies, it's very hard to get that blend together, and I think New Zealand horror comedies do it better than anybody else, and this is yet another example of how good the horror comedies are as far as New Zealand is concerned. So if you are a fan of this sort of stuff, if you're a fan of throwback early Peter Jackson, then Deathgasm is one I would highly recommend to you. I enjoyed it immensely, and I am basically recommending to anyone out there who believes that this might interest them, because it does deliver on what it promises, and as a result of that, I'm going to give Deathgasm 3.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.